Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. This is Aisha Nazir. The topic of today's lecture is polymorphism, different types of polymorphism, why polymorphism is important, and in the same way, the difference between the function overloading and function overriding. Where does we use these both types of polymorphisms and how it helps to achieve multiple functionality with the same function names. Let's understand it. Polymorphism. Polymorphism means many forms. Polymorphism means that a call to a member function that will result in a different function to be executed depending on the type of object that invoke the function. There are basically two types of polymorphism. Number one is compile-time polymorphisms that we also known as function overloading, and the other one is runtime polymorphisms that is also known as function overriding. So what is compile-time polymorphism, or why we called it compile-time polymorphism, and what is function overloading? Let's understanding. Function overloading. In function overloading, we have multiple functions with the same name but different parameters list. We differentiate between these all functions, between these all methods at the compile time on the basis of parameter lists. That's why it's known as compile time polymorphism, because we differentiate all these functions on the compile time. That's why the function overloading is known as compile time polymorphism. Means polymorphism, multiple forms means multiple functions but with the same name. So what is the syntax of function overloading? First we have to define the return type and then the function name, and after that in the parentheses there would be parameters list. For example, there are three different functions, all have the same return type and function name, but the difference would be in the parameters list. Maybe some function has one parameter, other function has two parameters, and the third function may have 3 to 4 parameters. So we differentiate between all these functions because their name is same. So we differentiate between all these functions on the basis of parameters list. As you can see that here is a function named sum and the return type is int, but the parameter lists are different. In the first function there are two parameters, int a and int b. In the second sum function there are two parameters as float c and int j. Now there is first parameter is float type and the other is int type. It doesn't matter. The main thing is the return type and the function name must be same, while this is the rule that parameters list should be different from the previous one. After that, the third function is int sum, and here is three parameters, int a, int b and float c. Here are two parameters are of integer type while the third one is of float type. So we differentiate on the basis of parameters list. When we call the function, we give the arguments. According to the arguments that match to the parameter list of the function, we call that specific function. That's why it's called function overloading. Let's understand it with an example. The one rule of function overloading is that the return type must be same as the name in the functions. We cannot change the return type as we cannot change the name of the function in the function overloading. So here is a simple example of function overloading in which we created three different functions. All functions have the same return type as int, and the same name add. But the parameters list are different. In the first function there are two parameters of integer type, int a and b. In the second function there are three parameters as int a, int b and int c. And the third function is int d, in which it has four elements, int a, int b, int c and float d, which returns a, b, c and plus d. So in the main function Here, as you can see that the return types are same and the function names are same, but the parameters list are different. Okay, so in the main section, we are printing the statements that addition of two numbers are, and we are calling the function add. But which add function we are calling, because we have three different functions. Which function we are calling? It will determine on the compile time when we will pass the arguments. We are passing two values here, 10 and 20. It means it will call that functions that has two parameters. That is the first function. Right? In the same way, the second statement is addition of three numbers are, and here we are again calling add function. But again, which add function? Because there are three add functions, right? So we are calling that specific function which has the three parameters, as we are passing three arguments, 10, 20 and 30. So where is the add function which has the three parameters? Here is it. And we are calling this add function. After that, in the third statement, we are again passing a statement addition of four numbers are, and we are passing the add function that has the four parameters because we are passing four arguments. And here are the results of these function overloading function, right? This is called function overloading, in which a function is overloaded, means a function that has the same name and same return type but performing different operations on the basis of parameters. This is called function overloading or compile time polymorphism. The other concept is function overriding. So the next concept is function overriding. So what is function overriding means? Function override means, in the concept of inheritance, in the scenario of inheritance, the concept of overriding introduced, in which functions of parent class must be override in child class. Means the child class must mention the same function of parent class in its own class. Right? It means the parent and child class must have the same function. It means that child class has the same name function as the parent class. Both functions must have same parameter list in both classes. In the function overloading, the difference was, in the function overloading, the difference was the parameter list must be different. But in function overriding, the rule is that both functions must have the same parameter list in both classes. Signature must be same, and only one function override is possible. In function overloading, there were multiple functions. That's why it's called function overloaded, right? That the one function name is overloaded into performing different functions. While in function overriding, only one function can be override, only once in the child class, right? But the signature means the parameter list, the function name must be same. Functions are called on the basis of object. Here, because the concept of the scenario is of inheritance, so on the basis of object, the function is called. Which function will be called is determined on the runtime, because from which object we are calling, it's determined on the runtime. So that's why it's called runtime polymorphism. This is a very simple example of function overriding, in which we declare a class with name parent, and in the public section there is a function void show, and we are simply printing a statement, this is parent class. In the same way, we created the child class, that is class child, that is publicly inherited from the parent class. And here in the public section, we define the same function as the parent class, void show, void show. It means we are override this function in the child class, and only once we can override the function in the child class. But the body is different, that this is child class. So as I have told you that function overriding is a runtime polymorphism because it decides that which function is calling, it determines on the runtime. So here is an object of class child ch, and here we are calling ch.show. It means we are calling the child class object, the child class function through the child class object, right? It determines on the runtime. In the same way, I am creating the object of parent class, that is parent p, and here I am calling the show function with p, that is the parent class object. So it determines same on the runtime. So p.show, again I am calling the show function but with the parent class object. So which function is calling, it determines by the object. So here is the output. This is child class, which is the result of the first function, first child class show function, and the second one is, this is parent class, that is the output of the second p.show function. This is all about the function overloading and function overriding. Hopefully you understand the concept. Thank you very much.